fertilizing your bonsais. So you can fertilize your bonsais in two ways, using a liquid fertilizer or a solid fertilizer. So the biggest difference between these two types of fertilizers is that the liquid fertilizer is a fast release fertilizer. The solid one is a slow release fertilizer. The second difference is that the liquid ones are already processed and the solid ones are not processed yet. Unfortunately, you must use high quality bonsai fertilizer because it makes just a huge difference between what you can find everywhere, okay, and the real high quality bonsai fertilizers. So a tree cannot process unprocessed fertilizer. Okay, so the liquid one is already processed and the tree will just take it in as it is. The solid fertilizer is not yet processed. High quality bonsai fertilizers have inside them already cultures of mold and things like that, microorganisms that help decompose that fertilizer. When you put your solid fertilizer on top of your bonsai substrate and you water, those little microorganisms start to activate and they start to decompose that fertilizer. And with every watering process that you do, just little by little, that fertilizer will start to go into your potting mix, into your bonsai pot, and the tree will start to consume that fertilizer. So basically the liquid fertilizer is a more aggressive fertilizer. The tree can take it in just as it is because it's already processed. Just make sure not to go over the quantity that the manufacturer tells you to dissolve into a X volume of water. 2 liters, 1 liter, okay? Don't go over that because you can burn the tips of your roots and that's very bad. Also, make sure that when you're applying liquid fertilizers, make sure that the substrate, your bonsai pot, is wet. After and only after you water your bonsai tree, you can use a liquid fertilizer. Using liquid fertilizers is just such an easy method, and it also doesn't smell because it just doesn't. When you're using solid, highly organic, they're just 100% organic fertilizer, they just stink more or less and they get decomposed in about 4 weeks. When you're developing your bonsai, it's better to use more liquid than solid. Of course, you must use them both, but liquid, by being much more aggressive, can help you out grow your bonsai faster, or your pre-bonsai, how it's called, because it's not yet a bonsai. We're still developing primary branches, secondary branches, so we need to get a very aggressive growth. We don't need to care about the size of the leaves, the internodes, because we're gonna prune it hard back, and we need a very aggressive fertilizer. As your bonsai gets more and more refined, you should cut back on the liquid aggressive fertilizers. Of course, you can still fertilize with liquid fertilizers, but you have to make them into a smaller concentration, because when you're getting more and more close to the refinement stage, you don't want those long shoots and long internodes. You need to keep the bonsai, give it a step back. You don't need such an aggressive growth. You just need to calm things down, and that's when you should use a lot of organic solid fertilizers. One of the best things about solid high organic fertilizers it's that you cannot go over the top, because especially for bonsai beginners that can be a problem. With liquid fertilizers, if you don't respect the little quantity that you have to dissolve into 1 liter of water, 2 liters of water, whatever it says on the bottle or on the packaging, you can go over the top and you can burn down your roots. With solid fertilizer that cannot happen, at least it cannot happen that easily, because it's such a long process. The microorganisms take a long time to decompose that fertilizer, that type of solid fertilizer, and you cannot go over the top and burn the roots. By far the most important thing that you need to think about when you talk fertilizing, bonsai fertilizing, you need to understand that the fertilizer doesn't fertilize your tree. I know it's quite a challenge to wrap that info around your head, but the fertilizer doesn't fertilize your tree. You know what does? The substrate, the potting mix. That's one of the many reasons that we use high quality potting mixes for our bonsais, because when you water, the fertilizer goes in and just grabs onto the little tiny particles or the holes, the crevices, into those little tiny pieces of substrate, okay? And then you grow microorganisms there. You grow microflora, microfauna, okay? And those tiny little insects and fungi, because there's a lot of fungi into our pots, you just don't see it. You have to develop them, and those little micro little things, those are the ones that process your fertilizers. When do I need to fertilize? Okay, so the fertilization process begins with outdoor trees just after the buds have popped. There's the first growth, and after the first growth, the first flush of growth, okay, has settled in, the leaves have matured, they've got this waxy coverage on them, then you can go in and fertilize. Don't fertilize before that, because the tree hasn't got any necessities for the fertilizer, okay? It cannot process the flush. The first flush of growth is made from what's inside the roots and the trunk from last year. You can now go in and fertilize your tree, so the fertilization process has started. We use liquid ones, use solid ones, okay, until you go into the summer. When it's very hot, you must cut down on the liquid aggressive fertilizers and only use solid organic fertilizers. You need to keep those microorganisms inside your pot. You need to feed them. When it's hot, there's a high activity there, okay? When it's cold, especially when you're wintering your outdoor bonsais, those microorganisms kind of die, okay, because they cannot withstand such a cold environment. And of course they appear by using the fertilizers, okay? So the fertilizers help you bring those microorganisms in each and every year, and you fertilize until fall, okay? Especially because now we're talking about outdoor deciduous trees. You need a little bit of time before winter comes and they start shedding their leaves, okay? So the last fertilization should be done about in September, okay? Because the tree needs a clean soil before going into wintering season. When we are talking about indoor bonsai trees, Fertilization must be done all year round. Except in winter, you should fertilize them in winter, but more rarely, about once per month. It's enough. They don't get enough light. Another very important aspect, and please try to remember this. Fertilizers are not food for the tree, okay? They're just supplements, they're vitamins, okay? Because we are growing them into containers. A tree outside, growing outside in the ground, the roots go into the ground and search and find a lot of minerals. They find a lot of things that they need in order to grow healthy. Leaves drop on the ground, they rot, rain comes, they get things from dead stuff. Animals die, and a lot of things. Animals die in the ground, and they can find a lot of these supplements that they need. In bonsai, we are growing them into confined containers. We are using bonsai, high quality bonsai substrate. That bonsai substrate is mostly composed of rocks, okay? Volcanic rocks, clay, and those things are highly unorganic, so the tree cannot find the things that it needs. So here we come in with our fertilizer and supply the trees with everything that they need.